Jennifer. So get ready for that. All righty. And here we go, my friends. All righty. The Southside Virginia Writing Project is the folks that are sponsoring our summer webinar series. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about the writing project. And when I send you a follow-up email, I'll send an evite for you to join the writing project. It's completely free, as well as join our teacher studio space, which is just a great way to connect with other fabulous educators. So a little bit about the writing project. The Southside Virginia Writing Project is actually part of the National Writing Project, which we celebrated our 50th year reunion last year, which was very exciting indeed. The National Writing Project was actually started by an English teacher. We of course love our English teachers, James Gray, and one of the things that he believed was that great teachers of writing also write themselves. And that doesn't mean that they publish, though they might be, they could just be writing in their journal or things like that, because when we write ourselves, it impacts how we actually teach writing. He went on to later found the Bay Area Writing Project, which is in Berkeley, California. And now, if you can believe it, there are over 175 writing projects across the country. We've got writing projects international, which is really exciting. And in Virginia, we're particularly well represented, so where some states just have one writing project. We actually have not one, not two, not three, but seven, if you can believe it. And each year, like across the country, the writing projects offer over 2,000 hours of professional development. A lot of the research will say that the National Writing Project has been the most successful and long-standing professional development model. And what I'm going to tell you 2 seconds about is a lot of that is because the people that are doing this work are like Jennifer. They're not people that are coming in from publishers. They are teachers with boots on the ground that are serving their own districts. The other thing that is really cool is, well, I'm just going to keep on. Oh, there we go. There we go. Is that in addition to offering professional development for teachers, the Writing Project, including the Southside Virginia Writing Project, does lots of work with youth. So we have kids that come to campus and do writing camps and other cool things. And we also have this like wonderful cadre of professional writers that support the Writing Project. The list is too long to share right now, but I just pulled a couple that I knew folks would recognize. And of course, up there in the right corner is Meg Medina, who is actually one of our own authors here in Virginia. She actually lives in Richmond, which is very exciting. So, really, the idea of the Southside Virginia Writing Project is that great teachers of writing write and read, that all teachers are teachers of writing. And that's really important because when we have our summer institutes and professional developments, we love our elementary school teachers and we love our English teachers, but we love just as much, we have our social studies, health and PE, math, and the list goes on. And this idea that there is a pedagogy of teaching reading and writing that can be taught, and that that work really should be done by other teachers, because we know the most successful professional development is when teachers is doing that work in their own schools and districts. So today, building off that excellence, we have Jennifer Askue-Collins, and she is going to be sharing strategy, stamina, and self-regulation using SRSD and high leverage practices to launch the first 20 days. And a little bit about the very fabulous Jennifer is Jennifer right now is a program specialist at the VCU Training and Technical Assistance Center, where she does so many things, including provides evidence-based support to educators and administrators serving students with disabilities. Her work tends to focus on inclusive practices, especially designing instruction SDI, I'm sorry, literacy and math interventions that align with Virginia SOLs. She, with her background in special education and a focus on data-driven improvement, Jennifer partners with school divisions to strengthen their Tier 1 instruction and enhance outcomes for students with disabilities. She is also very exciting, a PhD student at VCU, research writing interventions for students with executive function disorders. And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen so that Jennifer can say hello and share her screen. All right, my friend, it is all you.
All right. My computer is telling me some things.
That is totally okay. And as we go, you're welcome to pop questions in the chat.
For some reason, Zoom is telling me I have to give it permission, which is, I've done this a million times. So
Yeah, Zoom can be tricky, can it? No worries at all. And if you need to, you can um always send me the presentation and I can share, but I know it's probably easier for you to switch slides and all that yourself.
there, I think it's going to work now.
Awesome.
Okay, we're going to move everything to the side, put it on slideshow. All right, can everybody see? Okay. You might have to unmute. I'm not going to be able to have, I'm not going to see my chats, I think, while I'm presenting. I only have the one screen today. So we have strategy, stamina, and self-regulation using SRSD and HLPs to launch the first 20 days. So I'm so excited to be here to talk to you about this today. I love SRSD, self-regulated strategy development, and HLPs, and I really do believe in them as great tools to build your instruction. We're going to talk today about strategy instruction, student stamina, and self-regulation, which are all those ingredients we need for success. So first, what do you love or dread about teaching writing? And you can unmute, or you can put it down into the chat, but I just would love to hear your honest reflection. What's one thing that you love or dread about teaching writing?
I would say one thing I love is that writing lets me get to know my students on a deeper level. And then I would say one thing that I can dread at times is moving the curriculum around to make sure that I can give it the time that it needs.
Luckily, writing is one of those things that can kind of drop into any content.
Exactly.
I'm a math teacher on a regular day, but this summer I did summer school and I thought writing, and I've always been a reader anyway. But one thing I found interesting was with writing, how much creativity, like how much autonomy I had as a teacher, and also how much freedom I could give the kids to express themselves. I love that. I mean, I teach math, so it's very rigid and it's like, this is how we do it. But math writing is definitely very different. And also, I realized that with writing, it can also not go too well, even though you plan for it to go a certain way. There are certain topics we thought the kids would be excited and they just didn't like it. So we didn't get much out of it. So we had to switch things around. But I like the fact that they also were part of the curriculum as we went, because I kind of figured out, okay, this is what they like to write about. So we tailored it to meet their needs.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, writing can give you some surprises, and sometimes they're great surprises. And sometimes it's, oh, we might need to start over with something else. All right.
I'm going to add one. I love that it lets kids get their thoughts on paper, and I hate or dread getting kids to revise, because a lot of the students I work with don't want to touch anything after they think they're done with it. They just want it to go away and they never want to go back to it. But revision is where I think the value is.
Yes. I have a quote about revision. I think it has something to do with writing is all about revision. And that's where the real work starts, is when you start to revise. Well, thank you all for sharing. Double check that. And all right, so here are our objectives for today. So our goal for today isn't just to learn about SRSD or self-regulated strategy development. It's to envision how you can use it joyfully and intentionally during your first 20 days of school to support every single writer in your room. So the first one is we're going to learn to support all writers in writing. And we'll look at some specific supports that can help students who struggle with writing due to cognitive, motivational, or emotional barriers, including those with learning or executive functioning disabilities. Second, we will implement a structured writing routine. So we will look at a plan for the first 20 days that will build on student stamina and develop their confidence and help with their writing proficiency through consistent and scaffolded writing routines. So we'll look at that SRSD framework in depth so that we can see all of those 6 stages and how we can use self-regulated strategy development to support writing and self-regulation. And by the way, this framework doesn't just work for writing, it also works for strategies outside of writing. So when you teach math, any math strategies could also fit into this framework. And so it isn't just isolated to certain strategies. Fourth, we will look at supporting students in writing instruction. So what kind of strategies and tools can we use to support students? And then we're going to connect this to classroom practice. So how can you use your high quality instructional materials, your existing curricula, to use as a tool to work with writing? All right, so I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. I would love for you to write a 3-sentence story from the point of view of a 5th grader who hates writing. So you can switch out 5th grader for a student in the grade that you teach. So just a quick 3-sentence story. What is a student thinking in your class? They just don't like writing. All right. Got a couple in chat. If you want to drop yours in chat, that will be great. If not, you can unmute. I would like to read some of the ones from chat. Some people love to write, but I really don't. It's so easy to talk, but so hard to get it down on paper. I never really say what I want to say. That sounds like some of my students. Here's another one. I'm very tired today, and I do not want to write. I hate school. I hate this class. My parents force me to come here every day. That sounds familiar too. Today was a day of cleanup at my mom's, but instead I'm sitting here at the tire repair shop. Can you guess why? I hate writing. Other people have all of these experiences and I don't. I never know what to write about. Oh, those are excellent. And I definitely have met all of those students. And here's mine. Ugh, it's writing time again and my stomach hurts. I don't know what to say. And even when I try, it just never sounds right. I just sit there staring at the paper until the teacher tells me time is up. I feel like I know all of these students. So luckily, we have some strategies that can help these kids. So let's talk a little bit about why writing is so important and why it's worth the time to put into it. Writing's a complex task and it draws on multiple cognitive demands. It requires our persistence, organization, and it requires us to sustain attention. So we have to put attention into it and we have to keep it up. For students with executive functioning challenges, and we can have executive functioning challenges at any point in any day. So if something goes wrong in the morning, you have a rough day getting to school, that can be something that's going to prevent you from having a really good day in your writing. So these demands can feel really overwhelming. SRSD is one of those things that could be a bridge because it integrates our cognitive, behavioral, and motivational supports, and it helps us to build clarity and confidence. I'll never forget a student I had named Matthew, and he was just a delight. He was bright and curious, and he would light up whenever he got started talking about things. He was one of those kids who knew a little bit about everything. And so you could have a conversation with them about pretty much any topic that we were bringing up in science or social studies. But he especially loved video games and sharks. And he knew every single detail there was about those. But when it was time to write, everything changed. He would just sit frozen at his desk. He would have his pencil in his hand. His eyes would be looking around. And then 10 minutes would pass, 20 minutes would pass. And he may have written one word. He may have written nothing. But he started to get a reputation as being kind of unmotivated or, even uncompliant. Like he wasn't doing what I asked him to do. So he would get into trouble for not having anything on his paper. But he really wanted to do this. He wanted to participate. He was completely shut down, completely blocked. He didn't know where to start. He didn't know how to organize his ideas. He didn't know what to do when things got hard. But the thing is, it wasn't that he was lazy. It was executive function. So he struggled with planning. He struggled with getting started with tasks. And he struggled with working memory. So being able to keep multiple ideas in his head at the same time. So when you gave him the direction, was he able to remember the directions and do the activities that were needed to follow them? So we decided that we would introduce strategy writing with self-regulated strategy development. And he started to shift. He started to be able to believe in himself. He would say, I can do this. I can do one step at a time. And we would use strategies like POW and TREE, things like that. And over time, his little hesitant one or two words would become more of a confident paragraph. He even started raising his hand during writing and starting to share ideas, with other kids. So that experience that I had of watching him go from completely avoidant to empowered. I mean, he wasn't a writer who would write pages and pages, but he was somebody who was confident enough to say what he wanted to say. It's a window into a child's thinking. I think Dorothy said that earlier. It helps you to understand what a student's thinking, and it can help us to understand what the student needs to regulate themselves. So here's a little bit of research on here. When we use writing, we can actually improve our reading comprehension, our critical thinking, and our communication. Struggling writers benefit from this kind of explicit strategy instruction and collaborative dialogue. So the more we speak with our friends about a content or about a topic, the better we are going to be at writing. And executive functions like planning, memory, and self-regulation improve with strategy use. So once we start using those strategies, it empowers them to improve their learning wherever they are. And thank you for saying that, Sarah. I think Matthew sounds like a familiar student to others. Oh, there we go. So why do some writers struggle? So we have a lot of executive functions here. And these are some things that are pretty common. So inhibitory control, when we write, we have to be able to resist distractions. We have to stay on topic. We have to avoid impulsive responses. So we have to not go down any rabbit holes. We have to kind of keep ourselves focused. Working memory, we have to work on holding our multiple ideas in mind while composing our sentence. So we have to remember, what does a paragraph include? What are my directions? What's the prompt? All of these things have to be considered. So there's a lot of complex things that we're thinking about when we are doing some writing. We have to have cognitive flexibility. So we have to shift ideas. So once we do our drafting, then we have to, like Suzanne said, move into revising. And revising isn't necessarily, isn't really the same skill as that drafting. So we do have to have some cognitive flexibility to be able to shift our mindset from the generation of the writing to, you know, changing it, making sure it means what we say, what we think it means. Planning is another issue a lot. So organizing our ideas and using outlines and graphic organizers are not something that's natural for a lot of children. And so we do have to explain those explicitly and show them how and why they need to use them. Problem solving. So finding a solution when you're stuck in writing, what is it that you can do? If you can't think of any ideas, what are some strategies that you can use to think about that? How can you revise an unclear sentence? So if you've written this run-on sentence, what are the steps that you need to do to straighten that out and make it make sense? And for reasoning. So reasoning is when we are making logical connections between our claims and our evidence, explaining our cause and effect. So why did we say what we said? SRSD with certain strategies can help us to choose better connections. And students with executive function disorders or an executive function disorder that day may struggle to generate ideas. They might have poor sentence structure, so they may need specific instruction on how to form a sentence. And so they are going to want to avoid writing tasks so that they don't have to deal with that discomfort. So this is my wonderful theoretical framework about writing. And basically what I want to tell you is reading and writing are interactive and dynamic. So they interact with each other. One improves the other, kind of if you would imagine an arrow that goes back and forth between the reading comprehension and written composition. And it involves many, many skills, obviously, for both reading and for writing. And they kind of run back and forth. But the thing that I want you to think about the most here is this part about the domain general cognitive skills or executive functions. So these are the foundation of everything. These are the things that need to be calmed down. They need to have strategies. These need to be in place before any of this upper tier things will happen. And in the middle, relating to everything, we have our social emotional aspects, our motivation and attitude, and how we feel about our efficacy when we write. Like, are we confident that we can actually do this? And our background knowledge, or things that we know about the world and about the topics we need to write. Do we feel confident about that? And are we able to put that into words? These other skills are more of that learning how to deal with the code of our language. And those are also things that we need to build into our system. All right, so what challenges have you observed in your students during writing tasks? So we heard about Matthew. What else have you encountered? Getting started, it's so difficult. How to brainstorm, struggles with starting. Yeah, that task initiation is a really, really big one. And getting started. Yeah, so getting this motivation, making writing more joyful, these are all things that we can do and we can control a little bit. All right. Thank you all. So when we have some challenges, sometimes we can look at these and we may be able to fit into our instruction some assistive technology. So we have a tool called the SET framework. And this is something that can make sure that we are thinking about a student-centered process, or you're a context aware of where they are in the building and in their class. And it's an approach to decision making that's related to determining assistive technology or specially designed instruction. So rather than just kind of choosing a solution first, the SET walks the team through understanding the learner and analyzing that environment and the task, and then identifying tools that could be appropriate. So when we think about a student, we can ask, what are those students' strengths and challenges with writing? Do they struggle with spelling, idea generation, handwriting, planning, or staying on task? And what are the things that motivates them? So what are some of their interests? We can also think about the environment. We can consider where and when is the student expected to write? What writing supports are already in place? Do they have anchor charts up? Do they have an additional teacher or a paraprofessional in the classroom to help with motivation and encouragement? And are there a lot of distractions in the class? Are students able to access lots of resources so that they can come up with some more ideas? And then we can look at the tasks. So what are the specific writing tasks that are challenging? Is it composing sentences, organizing paragraphs, revising? What are those things that the students having trouble with? And which writing components require the most support? Then we can start brainstorming some ideas for tools. And we try to match the right tool with the right student based on their context and needs. And then we would try it out for a while, collect a little bit of data and see, is it effective? Is it working? If it is working, then great, then we can continue on with that. And if it isn't, then maybe we should, try something else that's on our list. And I'm going to show you an example with our friend Matthew. So if we look at him, we know he's bright and curious. We know what he's motivated by. He loves to talk about video games and sharks. So he's probably got some other interests too. So it doesn't seem motivated during writing, but he's really just overwhelmed. He struggles with planning and task initiation and working memory. He wants to please, but he doesn't have those tools that he needs to begin and to sustain his effort. If we look at his classroom, he's in a traditional classroom. He had access to devices. He didn't have a whole lot of scaffolds in place in the class, so there weren't, anchor charts to help him. They didn't have very many visual or verbal or text supports in place. His tasks that he was expected to do were things like generating ideas and organizing thoughts, writing paragraphs, and then revising those paragraphs. He was having trouble getting started. And he needed help with sustaining his writing across time. So he was struggling getting through that writing process. So some tools that we think about, since he was able to talk about what he wanted to write, we could use some speech to text to support his verbal expression, maybe some graphic organizers to externalize his idea planning so he can see where they fit in the structure of a paragraph. Digital writing templates to help him with structure and, remembering all those steps. And so when we're doing revision, maybe we use some text to speech so that it reads it to him and he can hear what it sounds like and see if it makes sense. And then other support. So we might try out like time timers, those timers that show you how much time is left with the visual, like a pie piece that kind of moves slowly. Digital or printed checklists. Self-talk cue cards, and we'll talk a lot about self-talk today. And, helping him to set some goals. So maybe he's, has a goal to write just a couple of sentences at first. And then once he feels more confident, then increasing that as we go along. We also might monitor this with some goal sheets, with maybe our little rocket ship, and then each time he completes a step or achieves a certain level, then he can color a piece of that. Has anyone used the SET framework before? We love the SET. Yes, I love the SET too. I think it's a good problem-solving tool, and it doesn't take a ton of time, and it's a really great collaborative way, especially if you're working with another teacher, to kind of come up with some ideas together. And it's really great when you are stuck on a kid and what's happening. Absolutely. So how can we improve our writing instruction? So we can introduce some strategies and use the self-regulated strategy development in order to teach those strategies. We can use some external supports, like our graphic organizers, for example, some different metacognitive techniques. We can structure our environment and our routines. And especially, we're going to use some explicit and systematic instruction to present this information. So HLP 20 reminds us that this is frequent and small group and individualized strategy instruction with high rates of practice and feedback. So we want to make sure that kids are constantly talking with each other, talking with us as teachers, and participating in those activities, whatever they are. Because writing is cognitive, it's emotional, and it's strategic. So self-regulation is key to academic and life success. So if you are able to make yourself do hard things, it is something that can really improve your persistence when you're doing things in the world. So executive function skills support our attention, planning, and flexibility. It builds our self-regulation and writing together. It supports our engagement and persistence and agency. So it helps us to make choices, especially if we feel more confident about this. We're able to make better and more choices. It's harder to make choices if you don't really have an idea of your options. And this works especially with somebody who is having frequent executive functioning challenges. Yeah, and that model that I showed you earlier, that literacy model and SRSD align really well to support that whole child, supporting their needs from their skills, their cognitive skills, and their self-regulation. Okay, I hope this is going to work. So I wanted to show you this adorable video. It is one of the cutest videos I have ever seen. And I want you to think about, what is his inner coach saying to him? Let me.
And customize insurance to save.
Can you hear? All right, could you hear that? I hope so. Yep. So he's talking to himself. He's a little nervous. He's about to jump into this deep pool and he's talking himself up. So I want you to think for a second, now that you've been inspired by this little boy, what are 2 positive self-talk statements that you could make to yourself if you were somebody who was nervous about starting a writing project? And you can drop them in chat or unmute. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's my favorite ones that I wrote down. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just have to start. I can do hard things. Yes, absolutely. I know I remind myself of that a lot. I've got this. It gets easier once I start. Get out of your own way. I love these. Yeah, and I think that your inner coach kind of is going to have your voice. So it's important that we let students kind of come up with those on their own. Maybe they're inspired by some that somebody else says. Maybe saying I'm brave and I'm strong is something that would be helpful. I got a couple on here, some positive self-talk. And I think it's also helpful to have different ones maybe before writing, during writing, and during that revision stage, so that kids can have something in mind specifically for that task. Of course, some general ones are pretty helpful too. So things like, I am a writer. So calling students writers, making sure that they, that we're using vocabulary that kind of empowers them is helpful. Understanding that we don't need to be perfect, that mistakes help me learn, that we do learn through all these struggles, and then that writing gets easier every time I practice. So I see some of your self-statements are also kind of reflected in the ones that I was thinking about too. I think about this as feeding our brain with positive talk so that the negative thoughts don't have a chance to take hold. Do any of these resonate? Or do you think that this would be something that would be helpful? Almost every published author always says when they're interviewed that they force themselves to do a word count each day because it gets easier once they start putting words down. Yes, and even I have heard as a strategy, even just copying some sentences as some of, as the beginning can be helpful to get your ideas flowing and your hand warmed up. In Orton Gillingham's, we even just write the alphabet to get started, get your hand warmed up. I can go back and correct mistakes. And the first draft is not the final draft. I love it. This would be a really great thing to have as an anchor chart in your classroom, something that kids can kind of look at and get inspired by. Some of the strategies, we have a little space where we can put one sentence on there that we can kind of repeat to ourselves when we get stuck. So, if we're starting on the pre-writing stage, maybe we can put on something like, I can do this, I just take one step at a time, or one step at a time. One bit at a time is helpful. So they can write that on their paper so that as they're working, they can repeat that to themselves. All right. All right, so first let's set the stage for student ownership. So we want to make sure we use the gradual release of responsibility. So we will model our writing moves with kids, and we're going to use think aloud. So what does a proficient writer think about as they are getting started? What goes through your head? How do you make up ideas? Then we will do it together in a guided way. So maybe we do it together as a class, and then we create some anchor charts and post them. We share our writing. We look at models of writing, some exemplars, and see what it is that we're going for. And so we do those and color code them together so that we can really understand what that writer was doing. And then together, maybe kids will work together as pairs or as small groups, and they can do some writing together and kind of maybe coach each other and make sure that they are using all the steps in the strategy. And then finally, we want all kids to be able to get to that independent use of the strategy. So this is all talking about high leverage practice number 16, which is using explicit instruction. It's something that we always recommend for people to use at a tier 1 level, but this is something that could be extended as kids need more scaffolding too. So when we integrate the SRSD writing strategies into the model during the first 20 days, we're equipping students with skills and confidence to be able to write on their own. So as we're doing this, we're giving them all these steps and building all the parts of that, the foundation all the way up, so that they will be able to have that reading comprehension and writing composition at the same time. Yes, I see. So Danielle Taylor, you're saying I'll use the first one when writing my dissertation. I am telling you, since I started that my writing has gotten a lot easier and a lot smoother. I'm not worried about being perfect all the time. So as I'm working on my dissertation, I am using some of these self-regulated things. Yes, and working on that explicit instruction is really good. All right, so here we go. This is it. These are the 6 stages. So SRSD has a ton of research. It's, started off in the 80s and it's had some different names. So in 92, they settled on this name, the Self-Regulated Strategy Development. And it's an evidence-based instructional model that teaches students how to write and to manage their own learning. So it's not just writing, but I think this really is something that helps with learning overall. So you may end up with some strategies like POW plus tree or stop plus dare. So when we teach this for writing, we use some genre-specific strategies, and so we fit those into it. If you're teaching it for a different strategy, for a writing strategy, like maybe like UPS check or something, you could go through these same 6 stages and still be working with an evidence-based model. So students are taught it's a recursive process with a focus on self-regulation skills like our goal setting and our self-monitoring and self-talk. It's student-centered and flexible and backed by decades of research, as I said, from the 80s. It's a teaching framework that helps students learn how to learn. So we might use Powtide for expository writing for informational things. So this would be helpful in the history or science. Or Stop and Dare for persuasive writing, again, probably a social studies skill, or English. This model is going to build their self-efficacy and improve the quality and fluency of their writing. So in students, it has been shown that students increase the number of words as they write. So that's what we usually use as a measure for fluency. And quality, so using those rubrics are things that we use to measure our quality. So SRSD has consistently shown strong results, and it works with students with disabilities. So it's been studied with learners with learning disabilities, emotional and behavioral disorders, and autism. So SRSD directly aligns with that HLP 14, which is about the cognitive and metacognitive strategies, because it explicitly teaches students how to think about their own thinking, so that's metacognitive, and teaches them the cognitive strategies, so it teaches them the skills that they will need to be able to write. So overall, this is something that can help kids move to independence and academic success. And as we said, this can be for just about any grade level. So there's a lot of research in the middle grades, but as a PhD student, I have been definitely using some of these strategies to help me keep going when it's starting to get a little bit rough. So let's talk about each stage a little bit. So first, we need to develop our background knowledge. And so we're going to be thinking about what is it that we want to be writing about? And like how can we learn about this deeply enough that we will be able to have something to say? So declarative, procedural, and conditional knowledge. So we want to explore the purpose for writing, who are the audience, what are the characteristics of the genre we're using? So typically, we want to start with persuasion because it's kind of easier, but then we move into that informational writing because it's so common. It's something that we use a lot of. This can also be used for narrative writing, but it's probably informational is the one that we'll probably use the most. And self-regulation tools. We will engage in discussion and reading of mentor texts. So what are some things that you do to help build students' background knowledge? What are some things that you could do that would do that?
Show them videos of the topic, maybe from like nonfiction resources like news resources or National Geographic, Discovery, or the
Absolutely.
Library of Congress.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. And your reading curricula will probably have the science curricula may also have lots of different tools similar to that. So maybe some writing, some videos and things that you could use.
We could also ask them what they know already about the topic, or if they know anything, something similar to the topic.
Absolutely. We want to connect what they already know so that to what they're about to learn so that they have a place for that to attach. If we can do that, then they're much more likely to remember it than if it's just some isolated thing. Having experiences, I know having videos is kind of like a secondhand experience, but maybe if they went on a field trip or experienced or had a problem solving session or something like that, could be helpful to develop some background information. Making a brain dump and having connections before the beginning of each topic. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even just reading multiple texts, maybe different types of texts, can be a good way to develop background knowledge to help remind students what they do know, like what they have learned in the world. So maybe we have an advertisement along with an opinion article, along with a factual article. And then they read all of those things and discuss all the intricacies, whatever, you know what I mean, that are in those words, in those articles. Lots and lots of partner talk. So this is where we talk with each other and remind ourselves what we know. You know, maybe we're learning something new from our friends, but maybe we also just gonna get to talking. So next we'll be discussing it. So we'll have a lot of dialogue. This is where we're going to intentionally put that dialogue in about our writing beliefs, our attitudes and current strategies, but also about the content that we're talking about. We're going to introduce our graphic organizers and our mnemonics here. So we'll talk about how we're going to write, and we're going to build our student commitment and motivation. So we're kind of encouraging each other. We are coaching each other as we go through this. You know, we can do this and we can do it together. So next, we will model it. So we're going to model that full strategy using think alouds. And as I said earlier, we're using things about what am I doing as a writer that is special, that is what a proficient writer would do. We're going to highlight our self-statements. So here, for example, this is an example of a strategy, and this one's called POW Tide. There's also a one that we use for higher grades. We call it Power Tide, where we add a couple more steps. We can add in some self-talk. So they just choose one of those strategies, one of those statements, and write it here on this line so that it is right in front of them as they're going through their organizer. We're going to use a lot of collaborative activities and peer demonstrations. So students are going to demonstrate to each other how they have moved through this. For POW Tide, we have plan, organize, write, and say more. So the plan part includes pre-reading. So we're going to read a couple of articles and we're going to do a gist statement, which is just summarizing that. We're going to look, if we're doing a writing prompt, we're going to look at that writing prompt and decide, like, what are they asking me to talk about? And then I'm going to, you know, generate my ideas. Like, what do I want to write about this in the prompt? Then I'm going to organize these things. So I'm going to put all of that into a tide. This is the topic, information, details, and the end. So I would put in my topic, maybe write a topic sentence. You have a lot of explicit instruction on how to write a topic sentence. And then I'm going to write some information. Then I'm going to explain that information. So I'm going to do this ID part probably 3 times. So I have a little bit of information, a little bit of explanation 3 times. And then I'm going to wrap it up and come up with an end. So that's that write and say more. I'm always going to be going back and looking at this writing more than one time. I'm going to model that for the whole class. That this isn't something that's just one and done. Writing is one of those things that can kind of take a while. So we do want students to memorize their strategies. So we're going to reinforce this mnemonic. We're going to do this many, many, many times. So we'll do it, the I do, we'll do it together, and then we'll practice it with groups until we are ready to move on to independence. So we will memorize what these all stand for. We might play games, you know, like, what does the P stand for? Like, oh, it's got P1, or P2, P3. So we have 3 different things that we do for P. What does the O? What do we do for O? You know, so we play games. We maybe throw a ball back and forth. You can say P, O, and they, you know, students say what they are. And then we continually review. So we're going to not just use this probably for English class, but this would be really awesome to use during social studies time or science time, so that they can write about whatever they're learning in those areas. Because we are still going to be reading informational text. We still need to understand that if we write about it, our reading comprehension and our memory for it is going to improve. Not only that, but it improves our background knowledge, which is going to improve our reading comprehension. So all of these things, if we are doing them consistently within our different disciplines, then we are going to be building students who know how to learn. And so again, we're going to confirm our readiness before moving on, before having students do this as an independent task. So this one directly aligns with HLP 18, which emphasizes our active student participation. So we're going to try to use a lot of movement and chants and flashcards, collaborative reviews, just so that this becomes something that's very internalized. Then we will support it. So this is the heart of SRSD. It's our guided practice with scaffolds that we will gradually fade. So students begin using the strategy on their own, but with the support through the graphic organizers or verbal prompts, teacher and peer feedback. So we're going to have all of this at this stage. There, you can see how these stages can kind of go back and forth as we need to. So if we're needing a little bit more scaffolding, we might move back to an earlier stage if we need to. So we're going to have our guided practice with the fading supports, peer collaboration, graphic organizers that we complete together, or maybe that we complete independently but work together. Setting personal goals and monitoring those goals through those little, we can have little pictures or little graphs that we keep track of to help us to monitor our goals. But just to keep revisiting that so that we'll think about it. And we're going to focus on our self-regulation strategies. Coaching each other again. And then finally, we get to practice it. So this is the independent stage. So students are writing independently using all of these strategies. They're going to continue with that self-monitoring and generalization. So generalizing it not just in English class, but using it in other classes as well. I think even math classes would be a fantastic place to practice. And celebrating our progress and plan for future writing challenges. So as we do it, we celebrate each other as we reach our goal. So yes, we wrote 15 words today or something like that. It's really something that we can do to encourage each other. All right, so think about one of your typical writing blocks or a typical time when you are writing, even if you are not typically a writing teacher. What are students doing in the typical writing block? Claim, evidence, and reasoning. Bye, Sarah. It's all going to be recorded. You can see it later. Thank you so much. So we're thinking about our claim. We're determining our evidence. Where did we get that? Probably from something we read. And why did we choose that evidence? How do we show that reasoning in our stories? Does a typical writing block always have all of these things? I remember when I first started teaching, my typical writing block was I would put up a prompt and we would just start writing. So we didn't really think of too much about putting that support in. We maybe had some individual, working one-on-one with kids, but we didn't really have strong structured practices in place when I first started. Once we started thinking about, how could we structure this for kids and help them to remember what they need to put into their stories, things got a little bit easier. Their writing improved a bit. Referring back to helpful mentor text is something that SRSD can help us to do. So using different graphic organizers, maybe bubble maps or things to help us to generate some ideas, a possible thing that you could try. Absolutely. So SRSD is one of those things that can help students feel more confident and successful because we're giving them a starting place. So if we say, here's a strategy, let's start with POW. There are some concrete things that I can do with that. I'm going to read this story. I'm going to figure out what the gist is of the section that that's important to my prompt. I'm going to learn how to take my prompt apart so that I know exactly what they're asking me to do. And then I will be able to pick my ideas. I'll be able to think about what I want to write about. So how am I going to address this prompt with what I just read? So that's where I can find some evidence from my mentor text and say, hey, or my mentor text or from my background knowledge text and figure that out. If I look in that mentor text, I'm able to say, how did the exemplar author write it? Can I copy that? Can I do something like that to develop my topic sentence, for example, or for my ending? How can I use that mentor text to help me with the structure, the language part of my words? assistive technology, and using AT are things that can definitely be helpful here too. Thank you. All right, here we go. The first 20 days is it's like a foundation for your whole year. So according to Fisher and Fry, the first 20 days are critical for embedding our behaviors, routines, and habits that support academic risk-taking and collaboration. For writing instruction, especially when we're teaching self-regulated strategies, we want to start as soon as students arrive. So they're in 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade. You know, sometimes we think they should already know this, but they might know some of that, but they don't really know how to do it specifically for you. So we do need to explicitly teach all of these behaviors. We need to think about the routines that we would like to be in place and teach them to do it starting on day 1. They don't just know how to work in groups or how to sustain their writing effort. They need somebody to model it and to show them how that works. So the first 20 days is a plan that we map onto a calendar where we think of intentionally about what routines we want to put into place. So it might be things for responsibility, like, you know, where am I going to put my binder? Discourse, how do I talk to my peers? And how do I collaborate? Like, what are some of the things, some of the rules that we were going to have as a culture in this class? You know, how do we track each other when we're speaking? How do we look to the person who's talking to make sure that we are paying attention? It helps us create a space for modeling and for gradual release. So we practice it intensely, and then it just becomes something that we do. It's just part of our culture. And we can embed these writing strategies early to build stamina and persistence. So once we practice all of this, it's something that we can take with us into other classes, but also into the world where we're just thinking about how we want to work. So we're going to map it onto a calendar. So what are some routines that you would say are important to establish in that first 20 days? What are some procedures that you typically, teach kids right away? Think, pair, share, think, pair, write. Think, write, and think, draw. Yep, drawing things are helpful. What other routines do you teach? What else do you teach kids right away? Do you co-create your classroom norms? Notebook organization? Sure. How do we want kids to do our class? Is kind of what we're looking at here. Where to get your sharp pencils, your writing tools? Absolutely. What are the rules for all kinds of things, for going to the bathroom and things? The first 20 days, we can choose and teach short mini lessons that can help kids understand what we mean when we say we're going to do this activity, think, pair, write, or whatever. I'm going to show you some examples here. All right, so here is a sample calendar, and I just did it by weeks. You would actually take this calendar and put it in day by day. And so you will have, maybe we'll think about how we will map our SRSD stages onto this calendar and think about what our instructional focus is. So if I'm doing this in science class, then I might want to teach the same strategy, but use the content from whatever class that I'm teaching. So if I'm teaching whatever I'm going to read from my curriculum in our English class, I might use that as the foundation for how we're going to use our strategy, if that makes sense. So if you look at it, we have in week 1, we're going to develop our background knowledge. We're going to learn about those stages about discussing it and modeling and memorizing those strategies. We'll work on supporting in week 3 and practicing in week 4. So our instructional focus will go through that writing process. We can build in skills instruction, so about writing sentences or using language, using adjectives or using, fanboys and woobas, those kinds of things. So we can talk about all of these. We'll build them in as appropriate for our grade level and as appropriate for our content. So for our key activities, things that we will do, we'll look at those mentor texts and dissect them and show how the strategy is being applied in our mentor texts. Not only is that going to build our background knowledge, but it's going to just help give us some ideas for language later. We're going to talk about how we deconstruct our prompts, how we use some annotation, introduce our strategies, and we're going to create tons of anchor charts and put them up around the room so that we have some visual supports for every single student. Some people maybe want to use them every day, and others will internalize it and not need to look at it as much. For our week 2, we're going to keep discussing that, talk about our inner voice, show videos that, help that show somebody who is overcoming something that's difficult. We can work on co-writing as a class in our 3rd week, do some guided small group writing, and looking at some independent writing attempts. So getting started with that independence and building the confidence, giving tons of feedback and interesting, so that kids are getting feedback from each other and from you as the teacher. Any comments about that? So as we are doing our first 20 days, we're going to make sure that we are monitoring our growth and engagement so that we can celebrate it with our kids, but we can also look at it and know, where do I need to go back and reteach? So we have some strategies here. So a roster checklist was where we have every student's name, and then we have our strategies or components up at the top, and we just mark off, did the student receive instruction for this strategy? So we want to make sure that, that somebody wasn't absent the day we taught this, so that they are not going to have any gaps. So if we need to reteach it, we will be able to look at our checklist and say, okay, this person needs a review. We'll have some student writing samples. So we want to save our student notebooks or our student work, and we're going to look, are students using these strategies? If they're not using them in their writing, that just signals that we need to go back and do some reteaching there to show them how to use it to benefit them and benefit their writing. Looking at their goals. Are students writing goals that are appropriate for themselves, and are they meeting them? So this is just a student deciding, I want to write, maybe I'm going to write 5 sentences. Maybe I'm going to write a whole paper. Maybe I want to add in more adjectives into my writing. I want to use some of those $500 words. And the self-talk reflections. Are students persisting through difficult tasks? What else do we need to do to support students? So maybe self-talk isn't enough. What else can we add in? Maybe we go through that set framework again to help think through what is or is not happening during our instruction. All right. So after 20 days of SRSD, as a goal, I kind of would hope that writing will have changed. So if we think back to our original student who hates writing, after 20 days, they're not going to be perfect writers. We're not expecting that. We're expecting maybe a little bit more motivation, a little bit more, maybe a better attitude about writing. So maybe they come up with this. Now when it's writing time, I grab my POW plus Tide chart and I get started right away. I know how to pick my ideas and to organize them so that my writing makes sense. Writing still takes work, but now I feel proud when I finish, and sometimes I even have fun. I think building in the peer aspects makes writing be a lot more fun, especially when kids are noticing each other's writing and celebrating that as we go. We used to do something called praise, polish, and question. So students would share their writing, and the first 4 or 5 minutes is just praise, like what they did really great. And kids love that. So finally, what would you like your students to feel during writing time? Success. They can have their own definition for success. Empowered. Having some autonomy. Yes, getting to choose how and what they say. like what language to use. I just want kids to feel confident that what they write is going to be meaningful. It's going to be helpful, even if it's not perfect, that it's something that they can work on, and that you can come up with a wonderful product, even if the beginning was atrocious. So it's, you know, we can help each other develop our writing and develop this, that it's something that can be collaborative, but when we have our own voice, we can express it through writing. So I know the kids love to talk in class. Is this something that also can be a way that they can celebrate their own voice? So I also wanted you to think, as we leave, what parts of your existing curriculum could serve as natural anchors for writing prompts or mentor texts. So we in Virginia have adopted English curricula for the younger grades and older grades at some places. What are some of those parts of that curriculum that you could use for to attach writing to, or to attach our SRSD to? Do any of your curricula have books with them or materials that help to build some background knowledge? Are there other parts that your curriculum has that may be different from others? Well, I will definitely just encourage you to look through and see if you can look at it through a different lens. Maybe look at it as to what are some of the things that I could use to develop some anchors for writing. What are some things that are super interesting? Maybe some trade books that are referenced in your lessons could be something that you could look at the language or the rhythms that the writer has chosen. Maybe that is something that you could use as a focus to get kids to think about writing in a new way, or to using their voice in a way that's artistic and interesting. Our science, history, math, and technology, all of these curricula will be really helpful for this. And we're going to be using writing, yes, Dorothy, as a way to know and not just show. Yep. So we want to understand it, learn it. Writing is very connected to that reading comprehension. If we are doing more writing, then we're going to be practicing reading comprehension through that writing phase. Yeah, and even art and music, plays and films, absolutely. And I am available. So if you would love to talk about this more, I will love to talk about this all day long. Contact me. You can reach me at this email address. I'm a program specialist at TTAC at VCU, and I would love to continue this conversation. So thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Is there anybody who has any questions?
Jennifer, that's what I was going to ask, if anyone had some final questions for you. So maybe not right now, they don't, but I know, thank you for providing your email so folks can reach out to you individually. That is fabulous. And Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge specifically around the teacher of writing. And I know that we're going to go into our classrooms and use what you shared to our students' benefit and to our benefit, because when our kids are happy, we are happy, right? Thanks so much, Jennifer, and thank you everybody for being here today. We'll look forward to seeing you all soon. And our next webinar is coming up on the 30th, so hopefully you'll join us then as well. All right, have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.